going to say Pam has some books over here on the promise of the Constitution with the little vignettes, so great to share with a child or anybody that just wants to know the information. And
we have a lot of new sisters. They're
like
really good.
They're fantastic to have for
They are.
And how much the Constitution in 5 minutes a day with family, grandkids.
Seriously, they're fantastic. It's a page and a half.
And so great early morning study or with your scriptures.
There's something I forgot to say.
Yeah.
I started telling you about the lightning strike, but I never told you what that meant.
Oh.
What I've learned since then, and I've had to be taught this by the Spirit because no doctor could ever teach it to me, is that lightning strike also affected the lightnings of my eyes so that they're not able to drain the fluid. But I have been so blessed by the Lord that I've been able to see, even though I required some pretty strong glasses throughout my life. But it was that lightning strike that has also taken away my vision.
Wow.
So I'm working with both of those problems, and they're all coming from that lightning strike. But if I could just add this to the topic, I want to tell you how benevolent God is. That He can, that a 4-year-old child can go through that experience and then go on and live a normal life after that, and bring a family into the world and live a normal life. What a wonderful God we have.
Oh, yeah. I want to tell you a little aside of that because when I was in Peru, we were dealing with that. There's different levels of shaman. One to for your food, another one to cast out evil spirits, another one tradition. But the highest shaman, what they call him, the alto, had to be a person that had been struck by lightning and lived.
Oh wow! Yeah,
isn't that interesting?
Only strikes once, so I stay close to her.
But the concept is that light is part of God. Light. So you were, because most people will die, but if you lived, you were supposed to live to bring forth more light.
How cool is
And
that?
that's what you have done.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think I feel good about myself today.
All right, so finish
how
showing
much are
these.
your books, just so the girls know if they want to come over and pick them up? Pam, how much are your books?
How much is it? 25?
Or the one each, or what? What do you have?
25 for each book.
25 for each book?
Yeah, that's lower than normal.
Okay, we're gonna do it.
Well, I tell you, the thing that's beautiful about
promises of the Constitution.com, where you can go and get them directly.
Yeah, you'll learn about her 50th wedding anniversary and all kinds of stuff.
I opened this up. It's the House of Representatives. Last week I taught about the House of Representatives, and look how how easy is that to read to not only yourself but your family. It's a way to teach your family all about the Constitution in easy peasy way of doing things. So I'm telling you, it's a great book. I've used it in a lot of our teachings here in the 5,000-year leap and the making of America. It's just so beautiful. It really is. And Pam has just made it so easy to understand. So I think I paid more. I think they were $30 or so before. So if you can get it for $25, that's a great deal. But you need that in your arsenal of learning. So it's very, very important to have. And we're so glad that Pam is doing this. So if anybody can help, this is great. All right. Last week we talked about the House of Representatives and the Congress, the umbrella of the Congress. We have the Senate and we have the House of Representatives, Congress. All right. So this week we'll have just a little bit of time, but the powers that the Congress has. And how many powers? Do you remember what I said?
What page are we on?
20?
Well, my book's an old one.
That was mine.
Page 5.
Book 2.
Book 2, and my book's real old. I know there's been some reprintings, but it's the 20 enumerated powers that Congress has, and that's it. And this is like what Chris is teaching us here today is how they can take the power structure and just create more and more and more rules if we allow them to do that. But they only constitutionally have 20 powers. And power 1 was the power to tax. Okay? So up till 1913 or 14, I don't remember which year it was. Can you imagine living in a day when you never had income tax, personal income tax? And that changed under Woodrow Wilson. The way that the federal government was ever to get money was to be able to lay they would look at the expenditure and they'd say, okay, we have this many states, so if you divide it out, each state is responsible for so much to pay for that expenditure, okay? And then the states would then, remember we talked about Ledge Sasser, the states would therefore go to and see how many households there are, and they would tax the people to help pay our federal government bill. Well, now we know that's gone awry, and they're just not only printing money, but they're spending money just willy-nilly. And so in the Constitution it says, do you remember I showed you the little preamble and for the general defense and for the welfare? Well, for the general welfare of the United States was the power to tax. They could do a tax if it was needed, but not a personal income tax. Now, each and every one of us have personal income tax, and that all went away with that election. So, the Congress can raise revenue for the defense, and that is in the event of high risk. So, if, we had the 9/11, and so they voted to go to war, and that had to be paid for somehow. And so, probably most of that money was printed. Okay, so letter B under this, if you have your books, in connection with the taxing power, the clause states that the revenues can only be extended for the general welfare of the whole nation as it carries out the list of duties set forth. These funds are not to be spent for individuals, special groups, or particular geographical regions. This clause was designed by the founders to be a limitation on the taxing power of Congress. Have we seen that change?
No.
Is that being facetious?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we not? I mean, every time you see a bill come across anymore, is it not for special groups? I mean, there's so much corruption that has happened. And Alexander Hamilton became the Secretary of the Treasury under Washington, and he argued that this clause was a general grant of power. And the government was supposed to be a limited government. And it wasn't supposed to be, they have really changed the words and taken general to mean now they can just expand it to everything. Because it's the whole big family, and now we can spend willy-nilly, and it's ridiculous.
Colette,
Yes.
can you kind of tell us more where you are?
I was at letter B.
No, what page?
Oh, well, my pages are different. I'm under the 20 powers. Section 8.
Try page 13 and sit back.
Okay, so the power one was the power to tax, and that's what I'm talking about right now. I was at letter B under the power to tax, and then I am just going to briefly skim over things because we could sit here and spend hours going over each thing, and there's just not time. And so in 1936, when the Supreme Court virtually amended the Constitution by a judicial opinion, this is number 3, they called it the Butler case. You can Google the Butler case and read that. That really was very damaging to our Constitution. Under this, there are different clauses as well, but we are just going to really quickly. Under Clause 1, it provides that taxes of various kinds shall be applied uniformly throughout the United States. It is not happening now. It's not happening at all. And the Supreme Court interpreted this to mean geographical uniformity rather than a uniform assessment. So our own Supreme Court, as we know, has gone awry as well, because the Supreme Court has done a lot of damage to the Constitution. And power 2 was the ability to borrow money. And so a week ago, I'm sure this has changed, I got on my phone and I went to the debt clock. And the debt clock, so this is a week old, but it's right now at 29 trillion 600 billion 664,955,434. That's just
$30 trillion.
$30 trillion.
And at Clinton, we had neutral. We had gone down to zero. Wow. Shocking.
That's why they said that when President Obama was in office, he ran up, it was up to, when he left, it was at 14 trillion. So Bush was responsible for a good chunk, but Obama had spent more in his time than every president up to his point. More than every president. So
all those wars.
everything.
Yeah.
Everything. I mean, it when you think about it, it's mind-boggling. So Congress has power to borrow money on the credit of the United States. And credit is defined as trust in one's integrity in money matters. Woo. And one's ability to fulfill financial obligations. Is this fulfilling financial obligations, this debt clock? Absolutely not. And what's happening is they are printing money, and that creates excessive debt. And number two, unstable currency creates inflation. Have we seen inflation since Biden went in? Oh yeah.
Can I make one other comment?
Yes.
Because when Venezuela, Venezuela in 20 years ago, their dollar was equal to our dollar. Then they had a corrupt election, and someone got into power.
Mm-hmm.
He started the same situation where they just create more money. Today, our dollar is the same as 1 million bolivars in 20 years. They collapsed their own financial system. That's what happens when people just start printing and they start adding it to the stock market, and the stock market doubles, and home prices go up. But we're at the beginnings of a horrible corruption. It's frightening.
Collapse.
We really are. And even just with Biden, I mean, Trump was spending money too, And so we can't say he was blameless. He was spending money, but we were in a lot better situation than we are now. And when he closed down, the gas lines, and
he opened up, he slowed down the regulations so that there could be more economy, so
Right.
more funds were being generated that were actual by a free market economy,
Right.
not just through printing.
right. And Biden came in and he shut everything down. And now they're back to borrowing money again. Well, and I don't know if they were borrowing under Trump.
Well, they did
I think they were.
The COVID, right? They passed a pretty big stimulus bill.
Yeah.
But he really didn't need anything beyond
But
that.
I mean, I'm talking about borrowing money from like China and so forth. I don't think he was doing that.
They had minimized it because
They had minimized it, and like Robin said, was going off the free market. And there were we have jobs available, but nobody wants to work. If
you're being paid to stay home.
Yeah, and not only that, I think when you stay home and you don't work, you lose that desire. I think it is so much easier to sit around and watch TV and eat and do nothing. And I think we've had a lot of people that's fallen into that trap. It's just easy to sit home and do nothing. But it's not good for our economy. And I think one of the things I worry about, they've brought in over 2 million people at the border now. Mm-hmm. And I know that my husband's work, a couple of Venezuelans started working in, and then we all got COVID. They're not checking them at the border. And I think that's how we got it, is through these Venezuelans. And I feel sorry for these people. You think of Venezuela, and they said that, people were eating dogs and anything that they could find to eat. They were literally starving to death. And I would want to come to America. I'm sorry, I get it. But it's not fair to Americans. And then when we pay Americans to stay home, these jobs are going to get filled. We're going to find a place where unemployment goes boom down the road.
Right now, Newsom in California, Governor Newsom has now said that they will pay the health care for any immigrants that come into California. You imagine the flood? You get free care. And if your children are going to the hospital to have a baby, right, they're spending $10,000 for a child, where if they come in over the border, all of those things are being paid for. It's just a quick collapse by making promises for votes. Yeah, to keep them in power.
Last night I showed a property. As you guys know, I'm a realtor. And it was a mobile home on its own land in West Jordan. And the realtor was a Hispanic fellow, and he opened the door and said something in Spanish. And then we were walking through the house, and he said, and then we want to show you this great big garage. And we went out there, and there's all these space heaters, and there's more families living in there. And then there was a shed, and there was families in the shed, and I'm going, whoa. I'm sure they're not legal, you know. And he kept saying, well, I just let them stay here for a few weeks. I'm going, oh, okay. And there's carpet everywhere and furniture and beds and TV was running in this garage. And I'm like, yeah, they've been here a few weeks. So you can see the sabotage we've got going on in our country. And like Robin said last week, we have pastors and churches and so forth that are getting paid all this money to bring these people in and then divvy them out in our society, and they're getting paid a lot of money from the federal government. And this is so unfair to the American citizens. I mean, it's not right. All right, we Power 3, to regulate commerce. We'll just do that one, and then it's long enough as it is. So, how you coming on your stuff? Everybody's done good. All right. Clause number 3, Congress has the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations and among the several states and with Indian tribes. So when you think of commerce, what do you envision?
Business.
Yeah. I drive down the freeway and there's these big diesel trucks constantly. I'm like, oh, I wish there was just one lane for those diesel trucks because it's so frustrating. But, you know, can you imagine if that happened? What a mess our highway would be. Okay, so the federal government relied on duties on imports to raise revenue. And we talked about that last week where Trump came in and said, okay, China, we're going to start charging you tariffs to bring your stuff in. And this just incensed, all the Democrats. This is the way it was set up with our founding fathers, is if they brought in goods from England or whatnot, they paid a duty. And we paid a duty to them. And so this is the way it was set up, is to raise revenue to run our government. Our government was never supposed to have 3 million plus employees. Never. It was not. In fact, we know that Congress was supposed to go back for a temporary short period of time to do votes, and the Senate was supposed to come even less to vote on different things, not have all these non-governmental organizations, OSHA, and I can't even think. My head wants to explode when I start to think of
Department of Education.
Department of Education. And then to have these departments, you got to hire people to run them. And before you know it, we've got so many organizations, and we've got millions of people working in D.C. In fact, we talked about how much a senator made last year. A lot of these employees that work for the federal government make all six-figure incomes. So that's what our tax dollars are doing. It's kind of crazy. All right. So let's see. The interstate commerce was to be able to have a flow of products and goods to be able to cross the state lines. And so one thing we know that the federal government did is they created the interstate highway so that you could cross from state to state, and the federal government could be in charge of that. And they also regulated transport. Back then, you couldn't transport alcohol. That was a no-no. And now drugs drugs are flowing in like crazy. And so anyway, we're really out of time. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, Robin.
I just have one comment. The federal government was supposed to regulate like weights and measures.
Yeah, I hadn't got to that one, but yes,
Okay.
you're right. You're fine.
Sorry,
That's
I was
okay.
just thinking that's your interstate commerce, so that when you buy a pound of potatoes there, it's the same pound of potatoes or a gallon of gas. Like there's certain things that commerce, in order to be fair, you have to have the proper weights and measures.
You do. That's actually in the I think the next.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Establish rules of naturalization and rules of bankruptcy. We can really quickly establish rules of naturalization. Originally, all the states warmly encouraged naturalization because of the shortage of manpower. And then Dr. Kimber, I remember he talked about how the fairness is of bankruptcy. And, you kind of go, oh, well, that doesn't seem very fair. But when you learn the concept, we read that book, Jonathan Cahn, The Mystery of the Shemitah, and how the Jews, every 7 years, they could release their debt, which is like filing a bankruptcy.
It's every 50 years. The
Yeah.
Shemitah.
Every 50 years.
Oh, every 50 years.
50 years is the Jubilee, which is releases debt.
Okay,
And
so
every 7 years.
This is when they allowed them to rest the land and let the
Yes.
people. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I remembered that part. So they would allow them to rest their land, and the poor could come and glean from the fields for an entire year. And then every 50 years, you could have a full release of the debt. Yeah. And that's like bankruptcy. But bankruptcy is every 7 years. And I know people, I knew a realtor lady that her and her husband every 7 years filed bankruptcy. And it's like, that's stealing. It really is. It's not fair to run up your debts and then, I can see if you have medical and so forth and it's overwhelming and your insurance wouldn't cover it and, but to just run up your debts and then file bankruptcy. And I kind of knew this person and that's what they were doing. And it really is unfair. And then they would shelter their stuff so they couldn't come and take it away. And so that's cheating. But Dr. Kimber was very much thought it was very fair to be able to have bankruptcy. But at the time, too, the man's going through chemo and had medical bills. And this was before, he had Medicare. So, yeah. So anyway, any other questions? We've run out of time. It's 11:30. So we will finish. Okay, so next week, I'm really excited. I talked to TJ Sorensen. He called me the other day, and he started having dreams and visions. And then all of a sudden, he's kind of like Carrie Guthrie. He says, I've never had any kind of artwork in my life. And all of a sudden, from these dreams, I'm able to create this beautiful artwork. And it's got like messages coded in the pictures. So he's going to come and show us his artwork and show us in the pictures what the different things in his dreams. So I'm very excited. So TJ Sorensen, that'll be next week. And then in 2 weeks from now, Robin and I will be teaching again. Unless you want to take a full 2 hours, we can split it up 50-50, whatever you...
We'll see about that. I'm going to, we've had a conversation about the book, and so I want to do part of it on creation because I've been incredible, the things I'm learning. So I will take maybe the first hour if we can do the creation part.
Okay.
And then the second hour for those of you that have the book and want more interpersonal stuff like.
So you
what
want
does
to take
that
the full
mean?
2 hours?
I
Is
think
that-
maybe
okay,
that's
all right. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and we'll try that. Okay,
Perfect. So,
in 2 weeks.
and Chris, thank you, and Pamela, thank you so much. I can't wait to see what this next book is going to be like. It's exciting.
I can't wait to see it either.
I know.
Chris,
I'm sorry.
how can we get somebody in our area? Do you have a list of somebody who would be close
Yes,
to
there
us?
are, but I'm happy to come down. I mean, there are, that's why I took a packet. So I have to fill whatever. And so if you guys want to, you've got husbands, family, kids,
Yes.
grown kids, you've got voters that just have them show up and we can get people to come. I'll come. There's people down here in Utah County.
Okay.
Just reach out to me.
Okay.
But we have to do it soon. This isn't something like, oh, I'll do it in
And
a
you can
couple
drag it out in the
days.
next few weeks.
No, we
and-
have to
yeah.
have all these signatures in and turned in by the middle of February.
And what if, like, our husband would sign it? Do you have some online thing or something
There's
like
not,
that?
this can never be online.
Okay,
This
it's all gonna be in
initiative all has to be in person. And like I say, you can reach out to me. My email is Krisk, @sprintmail, sprintmail.com. And I can come down, or I can send somebody else down, or whatever. But we need, I mean, you can help us. I mean, it's gonna, I mean, already, see, this is 2 hours, me gathering 12 signatures. There's, you know, we've got to have lots of people. And it's easier when we have a group like this than me trying to go door to door, or, you know,
Yeah.
stop someone on the street, because you kind of need to explain it. You need to give full disclosure. I'm all about full disclosure in everything. You know, health, you know, anything that you're signing, and so you want to know, and so most people need to have a little bit of information. It takes time to share that.
Well, yeah, I mean, here, sign here and just, you know,
Right.
just sign here and it's,
Yeah.
you know, you don't need to know, and that's what the Democrats.
Right.
We
Well,
don't need
and-
to.
Okay, honestly, what they used to do in the olden days, count my vote, I will say that publicly, they would hire people to do their signatures, and they'd say, oh, this will help. You're just signing to put, say, Mitt Romney on the ballot. See, they would lie about what it was. And so that's why we could get people to get their name off the ballot, because once they realized what it was, they're going, well, I don't want to sign up for that. You know, so, but we want to be open, and how many of you remember the tax initiative from 2 years ago where we overturned the legislature?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So they passed this horrible tax bill, and we get everybody, back then we had Harmons that kind of jumped on board with us and let us do signatures in the grocery store. But they had very few names that they took off the list because people had full disclosure. They knew what they were signing. You know, we were able to tell them, this is a bill they just recently passed. It had, you know, it had all the bad stuff in it, right? And there were very few names that they threw out, because that's what they expect to do, is like, you know, but we want people to know up front what this is, you know, of course, and then you don't have names to throw out, because people have full disclosure, so.
Cool. Pam, you were going to say something else.
I did. It was referring to what we discussed. Point out, I just finished reading First Nephi again, and I can't tell you where exactly in the book I found it, but the Lord said that He would preserve this land to the Gentiles so long as they lived in righteousness, but if they departed from that righteousness, He would give this land to another. I think we'd better think seriously about that when we think about the immigration problem that's going on.
Yeah. I agree. You know, do you remember, Chris, when we were, Dr. Kimber would pop in and talk to us, and he said he thought the wall was a bad thing, and we're all kind of going, I don't know. I don't think they're supposed to just come in. If God wants to knock the wall down, He can knock the wall down.
You can't do that. God would never break His own law in order to bring people in. If we have a law, the federal government, that states that we have immigration policies and that's being violated, it's not God that's doing that, because He would be violating His own law.
I agree.
If He did that, He would be unjust, and it says in Alma 41, I think it is, 3 different times in 10 verses, if ever God was to be unjust, He would cease to be God. It is not God that is bringing those people in illegally. You cannot take that argument.
Give me you're tired and you're poor, but do it legally.
And here's the deal. If you get in the Old Testament, Solomon was commanded to build a temple and build a wall around Jerusalem.
Right.
To protect the city, to protect. And
That's one of the 4 Abrahamic covenants, is security.
And He created nations to be sovereign nations. It's not this one world global. And that's what you do when you erase wall. People have walls around their home. The principle is true. It will work on the smallest level. So if you put a wall around your home, why do you put a wall around your home?
And this,
Like Temple Square, why do you put a wall around it?
Exactly, why, yeah, exactly.
well,
If it works at that level,
Yeah.
it'll work at the bigger level.
well, if you remember, Obama wanted to let everybody in, but they say his home in DC has a wall around it.
Right,
So,
he has a wall, right. Exactly.
yeah.